970 WSTX. Good morning. Yes, good morning, people. This is WSTX 970 AM. This is Russ, giving thanks for another day, another opportunity to be here on this side of the planet, this side of Earth, to be able to speak on one of the many things that we can be speaking or talking about or mentioning or reasoning on, one of the many things. However, we try our best to talk about the things that we are going to do something about, or if not, we know that someone else is doing something about it. So, from that mindset, people, let us do, uh, and always keeping our children in mind and in spirit when we, the adults, the grown up, are doing things that are eventually going to affect our children. So, yes, people, let's do. They don't want us doing anything. And the things that they want us doing are the things that are not beneficial to us here in the colony, in the territory. Okay? We are in the election season officially, to some degree, right? There's still some vetting to be done, but incumbents as well as aspirants have already made their elective known. We are currently in the hypocritical and the disingenuous season where lies are the norm, promises that can't be kept are the norm, where people are looking to support with the expectation of getting something in return. Um, and these strange alliances are going to be formed to come before the people, to come before the people, making promises that can't be kept, making statements that aren't going to be followed through, and approaching it with politics as usual. Politics, I'm sorry. Like, you want to say something?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Truck register.
yeah. Okay, people. So, sorry about that. And we're in a place and time where um, sincerity, you know, dignity is lost, maybe. But one thing I would like to warn all politicians, all, because Mr. Sewer is in my head right now and in spirit. And in the territory, for people to acknowledge what people are doing, they like the I said, I do. I. We're in that season right now. So as Mr. Sewer would spank me about it, I'm going to I with one thing. And the one thing I'm going to I with is the mentioning of what's needed and desperately lacking here in the territory. That being integrity. So if politicians and aspirants are thinking that the word integrity is one that they're going to use in their slogans to come before the people, I'm going to warn them that if they mention integrity, I will have to hold them to it because they have no shame. I guess the confidence that they have in being able to tell the people and use that word, it will tell you what they think of the people that they're going to try and, again, politics as usual. They're going to avoid certain truths. They're going to do everything for the population, especially the electors, to like them so they can get a vote. Anything possible. So truth is going to be sacrificed. It's going to be temporary. And when truth is temporary and going to be sacrificed, and people are doing things to get vote, who is going to vote for them. They have to be likable. And what are they doing to be liked? What are they sacrificing in the process? These are the very same thing that keeps us suffering about the things we're complaining about. And that's why, in order for us as a people to succeed and to have competently run government and governance, it cannot be politics as usual. At some particular point in your life, you have to draw you have to draw a very stern line. Or else no matter what politicians are going to promise you and tell you, at the end of the day, good governance is not going to be had with politics as you're usually conducted. It's not going to be. I think it's King that says, um, trying to remember his exact quote, change for whom and at what cost. So yes, there's going to be changes in terms of those people who are going to fill the positions, but are there going to be any real changes when it comes to what's needed to have the territory, the colony, put on its right course? Everything takes time. We know that. We know that. Everything takes time. It's not overnight. And to get the right people in these offices, we have to look at what the character and the personalities are. And many and quite often, we don't know. And sometimes we do, because in the territory, they're a friend of somebody, they're related to somebody, they're associated with, so we know more or less the things that uh, many of them do in their own private life. Who has sticky fingers? Right now, as we speak, when there's been people convicted for pedophilia, right now, there's people who are still somewhat participating in that event and doing these things. Many of them, believe it or not, are aspirants looking to get into these offices, apart from those who are sitting there. So again, when we fail as a people to be learned in the things we're supposed to be learned in, we often fall for the things that we're in ignorance of, the things that we don't know about. So in order to keep a people controlled, you seek to make sure that their knowledge is limited. A well-informed people is a powerful people. So who controls the narrative, controls the information, controls what people are going to consume, because you've been conditioned over the years to depend on somebody to give you information to do for you. And uh, we've never gotten to the point where we understand how intelligent we are, really. Because the question is whether or not you have integrity. Some people just don't care. So in this election year, those of you aspirants who are listening and making believe you don't listen, do not use the word integrity if you don't have the receipts to prove it. Because some of you shamelessly are going to try to present it to the people. And if we, as a people, don't own up to the responsibilities as to what our moral behaviors are, we're not going to get the necessary changes that's needed here based on the condition, the level of suffering, the things that you're suffering from and lack of. So we will continue to talk about the conditions of our hospitals, from administration to administration, from legislature to legislature, if we don't do what's necessary to stop it. Well, what are we supposed to do to stop it? Well, those conversations are going to be had. But if you know what the problem is, then you should know how to correct it, right? We're intelligent. You're not going to get the answer from one person with limited amount of time because there's a learning process in it. It takes time to teach adults something new. And it takes conviction to make sure that the children are well learned in the things that they're supposed to know. so they can have some kind of a they have a solid foundation, right, in which to face the future on. Making mention of that recently, it's about 2 weeks ago, more or less, where the DPNR, under I think is the Coastal Zone Management, had a community meeting, and the meeting was being held uh, concerning the status of our schools, and in particular, Claudio Marcus School and Alexander Henderson. And from the beginning, the people were not made aware of this community meeting that they were supposed to have had. The way the whole invite was handled, they didn't intend to have the people attend, but they had to make believe or to just put on record that there was something resembling a community meeting when it really wasn't. They tried to satisfy, I guess, the terms of the money process, and part of it is to make sure that the community was aware, but they had no intentions of inviting the community the way it was done. It wasn't even in person. They did this all online, and then they didn't use a format that was more it was more common or available to the public. And then when they did it, there were difficulties, and even with people who at the last minute found out that there was a community meeting. And we have we have people, believe it or not, who are sitting in these offices getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And you want to know what kind of representation we have all across the board when these monies and these individuals are involved? Is it that they lack competency? They lack interest? Is it both? Are they qualified? They're just sitting down to make themselves believe that they know what's actually happening? Because there's no way you can tell an intelligent people who have integrity that you're meant to invite the community on that subject when the way was done spoke to anything other than that. There was no public service announcement being made on any of the popular radio stations where people most likely would be listening. When nothing was put on any of the social platforms to that degree, when you really want to invite the masses, which is the community, on a subject like that. Apparently, they didn't have any intentions of even offering a follow up to the meetings that they had 2 weeks ago. So, in the meeting, when they said that they were holding these types of community meetings, not in person now, on the internet, where people are limited to access, that they were going to have, that's the reason why they were having these types of meetings, plural. But apparently, they don't intend to, from the Department of Coastal Zone and Management, have a follow up of the community meeting concerning the two schools. And we find out whether or not we as a people, parents, doesn't matter what part of the territory you come from, St. John, St. Thomas, or St. Croix, in particular, the students and the parents, I should say, who have either themselves attended these schools or have children, or whether or not you have children in these schools, if you don't step up as parents now to get involved, then you can't complain as to whether or not who's doing what, even with the schools. Don't wait for heroes and heroes to show up to do these things. You have the power in you to do it. And it's concerning our children, if we're serious. It's concerning our future. And the children are our future. That's why everything we do, if we're not doing it with the children in your mind and spirit, it is useless. Then we don't have a future. And we can't, as adults, blame the younger generation because we're the generation who is responsible for them. So any fault you find in them, find in yourself because we're responsible for them, not the other way around. But we have politics as usual, where people seem to think that what's going to qualify as differences. What qualifies that? Because differences is a relative thing. So how are we going to progress as a people when we need to progress as a people, right? To remedy the things that's needed here in the territory, if we are going to fall into the same mechanism of politics as usual, how people do things, the friended up, the friending in, the nepotism, the quid pro pros involved. I do for you, you do for me. I won't say this about you if you don't say this about me. I expect that if I do this for you, that you reward me with something. Politicians are obligated to pay the who pays the piper calls the tunes, pretty much, right? So while people are contributing physically and monetarily, you have to do the bidding based on who's supporting you. So to what degree is integrity going to come in the fold, and what does that look like if we plan to stop complaining about mismanagement of funds and neglect of fiduciary responsibilities? You know that is true. Every man, woman for themselves. That's how people are living right now. And so many people right now have sticky fingers. The most honest of person that you think is honest have sticky fingers when you if you're supposed to focus on them. What creates that? What promotes that? Mindset is what promotes it. When you're colonial minded, that's what promotes all the things you're suffering now because you fail. We have failed to recognize what that looks like. Personal accomplishments in a system that was designed by a colonizer isn't necessarily an accomplishment to the benefit of the status of a people. When you're part of the fabric and the fabric is capitalism, people do know that capitalism that exists right now, it cannot exist without a form of slavery. It just can't. So when we are in a capitalistic society, a capitalistic pretty much run republic, there's a system of slavery put in place. And we're not talking shackle slavery, you know, where you now have to worry about the difficulty of putting food in your mouth and a roof over your head. And the oligarchs have set up the system to have you spend most of your time trying to be concerned about that. Uh, they benefit because it's always a distraction. They're never gonna. I shouldn't say they never. They're not. It's not designed for them to make it easy for you to have a 4-day work week and all your necessities met, to include food in your mouth, shelter over your head. That can be done very easily, but the system is not designed for that. The system is designed for you to do your 40 plus hours trying to struggle to make so you don't have time to think and breathe and enjoy life. You have to hustle. You now are forced, some people's spirit are forced, they don't have, that's who they are. They're forced now to go against their own because they don't have a spirit that's based on integrity. They don't carry themselves with a level of dignity. There's certain limits to it. And when people are put in a position of destitute where they figure they have no choice, a lot of people have sticky fingers by nature. And they're smiling because that's exactly what they want to have a people doing these things. It is not by accident that in a place where we have transients coming from all over the world, pretty much here in the territory now, that there's two economies. One, the majority of us don't even see because we're not benefiting from it. You're not financially equipped to participate in it, so you're not going to see it. And those who have migrated from one lower economy to the other one, who have migrated, are at best sacrifice themselves as far as integrity is concerned. But yeah, all of that has to do with the fact that they know what our future, I should say, we don't recognize what our future is going to look like if we don't defend our children. And they know in order for you to address the future is not you and I. We're already old. We're only here to hold up the walls and till the new generation come to keep the liberation spirit going. So it's not up to us. It's going to be up to our children. That's what the future is going to look like. And if you don't define your future, somebody is going to do it for you. They will. They're doing it right now, as a matter of fact. Cultural assimilation all over the place. And that spirit, that scourge, that assimilation is also a spirit that, if you look throughout the world, they cause destruction, violence. But you seem to think that you're okay with it because you are reaping the reward of the violence. Anyone who thinks that the Republican Party or the Democratic Party are the answers, you're lost. When it comes to the issue of truth as what's affecting you, that's one of the biggest distractions, and they're smiling because people are trying to hold themselves to systems that they didn't pretty much design. And while the oligarchs who don't vote, you know, are controlling things, people are thinking that they have to be able to vote to change the system. And voting people is part of what's required to have good governance, to put people in there. But that is not the answer. And they know it. That's why they keep you distracted. Because then your only savior is to go through that method, thinking that you're putting the right people in these offices to do the governance that's necessary to correct the problem. And they have to smile because we're not learning what we're supposed to learn. There's a particular voting, I should say, there's a particular demographic, there's a particular people here in this territory. They don't vote, period. They're not registered to vote, period. But they run things. And they run things from a position of what? Knowing, knowledge on certain things. So they don't have to vote. They're not voting. They're not registering to vote, but they're still running and controlling things. And it's based on knowledge. While people are complaining and being distracted as to what's necessary, though it is needed, they are smiling because when people start to gather into this time of the year, where this particular one avenue that people are so much believing is the avenue for change is going to come out of, these people that don't participate in it, they're smiling and they're still running things. That's by design, right? And that's why you have a bunch of neo-colonialists who's pushing that agenda. And that's the reasons why our children, brilliant geniuses that we have in school, who could be excelling way beyond the norm, they are being prevented from shining, so to speak, from coming forward. Because we as adults don't keep them in mind, honestly, when we're doing things. When we're passing bills and posturing, you know, that they have accomplished something, especially when you're talking about those in government that come before the people asking people for a vote, whether they're selected or elected. They only get those offices from the people giving them some sort of a consent on a piece of paper that allow them to do that. But they're acting as if it's the reverse. And when you lose knowledge of what government is, what the structure of government looks like in earnest, you lose a certain amount of knowledge as to how it's run and how it's conducted. You lose the fact that the people are the power, not the other way around. And a lot of people say this, that the people are the government, the people are not the government. There's people, yes, that work in the government, but the people are not the government. Two separate entities. The governments are supposed to exist to do the benefit, to do the work under the consent from the people. Two separate things. Yes, the people do work in the government, but the government is not the people. And when we have government operating like the people are indebted to them, it's the other way around where the governments are indebted to the people, because the only reason why you have a government is agreed upon, right? It's consented upon by the people to have some sort of proper governance. So it's not a helter skelter. And that's why the people decided that we're going to need, you need a government to control the affairs of the people. And of course, if you need a separate body that's going to control the affairs of the people, people have to fill this area to do so, right? Not a problem. But to go back into people, the fact that if we don't now reach out to the, and somehow I'll get the number later on, the number to the Department of Education, and particularly the Commissioner of Education's office, to call her and to make sure that you request and demand a community meeting, an in-person community meeting concerning the status of the two schools that I've mentioned, Colorado Marco and Alexander Henderson, because it's needed right now. The amount of money that's been made available for this is to what? So we can waste money and say have contractors come in and make all this amount of money to give us and design schools that in 10 years, 15 years they can occupy. So you can have justifiable lies like they did with Arthur Richards in Stony Ground, where they said it was in a flood zone. The next thing you look, demolition gone, but the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods that was there before the school, they're still there, but they're not in the flood zone. So there's not children living in the houses surrounding, in the community surrounding where the school was, and they're only there for a certain amount of time in their houses. But Arthur Richards in the flood zone, and the children are there in school regularly between guaranteed between 8 o'clock and maybe 3 o'clock in the day. But that's a reason to demo the school. And if not for that, where's the reconstruction of it? So now the corruption is that you're going to rename a school that's on the footprint of another school that is Evan Williams. So you destroy Evan Williams and you construct a new school in the same footprint and you give it the name of another school that should have been erected on its own. So what happened to Evan Williams School? But we accept these things, and we have people in these offices, commissioners and directors, who accept these foolishness. And it goes to what? The level of competency and level of care, dignity, and integrity. And if at best these people are thinking that all of us think that way, then you see what kind of representation we get, what they think of us when they do come, because no one put into question in these things. Monies are being allotted for these things and it's not being properly spent. It's just wasted monies. So yeah, we have to reach out to the Commissioner of Education to demand that they have an in-person meeting with the community concerning the schools, because anybody, I should say, anyone who has some sort of analytical sense. As a matter of fact, that speaks to most of our school children. If they should have been to that meeting, and they would point out these questionable items that was being presented by people in our government, as well as the private sector who was hired to do this work for Cloud Marco and Alexander Henderson schools, where they are just hell bent on disrupting our children at all levels, right in front of our faces. They're insisting that they're going to try and do this construction, this demolition and construction in the Cloud Marco site, all at the same time. They're planning to do Alexander Henderson. So you want to bring a construction or expose our children to a construction site when they don't have to be exposed to it. And the developers and the designers are sitting down talking to people representative of the government, directors and commissioners back and forth, speaking this foolishness to these people, and they're just accepting these things. They want to know, well, how they get this position in the job, because apparently they don't care about how the monies are being spent, and they don't care about the safety and integrity of our children, especially when it comes to school. So yes, you, Miss Commissioner of Education, you better come forward, because nothing that you spoke of in that community meeting made any kind of sense to a grown adult with intelligence. Nothing. Because you allowed a developer to come and tell you after it was questioned as to the reasons why they were insisting on disrupting the Cloud Marco school system, right? When you're going to do this demolition and construction, right? When Cloud Marco, when Alexander Henderson has been vacant and empty, period, for how many years now? And there's still nothing there going on other than the lumber yard that it's become. So why are you insisting on doing Claudio Marco and disrupting children when they're learning, when there's no need to disrupt them, when you could take all that energy and time, demo Alexander Henderson and construct Alexander Henderson, and then you would have an opportunity to migrate the students who are at Claudio Marco so that they don't get disrupt their school hours of learning doesn't get disrupted by construction going back and forth. And you could then move them to the Alexander Henderson when that's completed, and then you could start Claudio Marco. Why not do that, right? But we always hear known to do the most asinine of things, people. Representative of people in a government who's getting paycheck, who's responsible for allowing these monies to flow back and forth, to accept this mediocrity. I don't think we should allow for any of it when it comes to our children. And the developer is there talking about how they've come to a way of mitigating any problems that might occur from a construction site with the children, how they're going to listen. And they're watching these people promising and saying things that they can't ever guarantee when it comes to a construction site. And then if you look at the way they rendered the plan, I hope we have enough integrity in these offices to make that meeting available so people can see for themselves what took place, what the renderings are like. And then they go to explain that in Claudio Marco, when they begin the problem, now this is all them speaking in tones of affirmation as if it's going to, and it's not necessarily made, but they want to insist that and speak as if it's a go plan. It's not. But they would like this is how they speak to you. And we have people in our offices representing who's supposed to be representing our interests is accepting the foolishness of them being able to put our children even in and near a construction site. And then they keep on adding more foolishness to the commentary every time certain things are brought up to them. And they say, well, on Claudio Marco's footprint, the Claudio Marco School is more south to the main road, Queen Mary Highway. It's more closer to that road. And we will start now on the opposite end of the property, which is the east end of the property. And then when we finish constructing the buildings on the east part of the property, then we're going to start the demolition of the Claudio Marco School so the children can stay there because it's two separate. This and the foolishness that these people accept when these people who comes from where are speaking to them. They don't realize their intelligence is being questioned when they talk this way. Because the last time I checked, and many of you would know, the most common airflow in the territory is from east to west. So if you start construction on the east of the property and the school is in the western part of the section, where is the sound and debris most likely going to travel according to the common wind flow here in the territory? Isn't it from east to west? They can account and guarantee what levels of lead, airborne particles might be there, and asbestos, and these things, these places do have them. How and when they were constructed. And when you start the construction process, these are the things that are going to be, well, the demolition process anyway. So why expose our children to any of that? Because the last time I checked Claudio Marco schools, the windows weren't soundproof. They didn't have enclosed air vac system to suppress noises if they had to close all the doors either, or to filter out anything. So when we have individuals in these offices accepting these mediocrity, this nonsense, we don't have enough dignity even to have integrity to defend our children. There's no need for them to even continue the construction or the demolition of Claudio Marco's building to begin with, because those buildings are intact. But again, if you want to spend and waste monies that are available to bring our children to where they should be, these are the things that you entertain. And then at some particular point in time, they were drawing reference to the new Arthur Richards School. And somebody correct me, who's sitting on the footprint of Elena, I can't even think of the school right now. Evelyn Williams, I'm sorry. Apparently, they need to check with the with the community that lives there to see what that construction and that demolition sounded and looked like to this day. And then the whole rationale of people who were representing the government speaking in tones of authority as if they knew the subject when the thing that they were saying was grossly incorrect. And then it was later on being corrected by the developer. But we had people in office that were answering questions with that sense of authority and tone as if they know what they were talking about. And it was all a bunch of nonsense. So when are we now going to get up and do? And if everyone knows, be proactive. Get the number to the Commission of Education's number. Call, organize. You must request a community meeting, an in-person community meeting with the commissioners and the directors. Because what they plan for our children, we can't allow it. We can allow them anyway. Because recently they just showed that they just don't have. They just don't have it, people. I trying to be nice because the appropriate words to describe them, I guess sometimes the description will be too honest for people to accept. Right? We just don't have people who are competent enough to run the affairs so we can have a bright future. So our children, our, you know, their system of learning is not disrupted like it's been for these last few decades. They're insisting on doing these two projects at the same time. Why? To please who? Doesn't even make sense. They're focusing on Cloud Marker School, where students are right now. It's the only elementary school the last time I checked. Well, not the only, but in this closer to the town area anyway. That actually have students attending, but you want to disrupt that when you don't have to. And we don't have people in government right now who have oversight or have enough integrity anyway to control what that looks like. To even see what the rendering, what the explanation was, even for Alexander Henderson. And you have people telling you things from the developer's position, and you want to know who's in these office listening to these people. When they show you the rendering and the justification as to why they're doing this and why they moved the Alexander Henderson building from its original footprint to put it closer to the road, and they're telling you why with elevation charts and the differences in airflow. All of a sudden, they're concerned about building schools that don't require mechanical AC and trying to render and add some kind of cultural references when they speak. Who do we have representing us in these offices that accept these mediocrity and this foolishness when people are speaking to you? That's what our children have to face when we have people who are packaging themselves that way, and they're going to assume that all of us are like that. Because if you're in government accepting these on these level jobs, directors and commissioners, then it must be that the people under you who don't have these jobs are equally as intelligent or less. So people, we have to get proactive. They don't want us doing and doing the necessary things that's needed to be. What does that correction look like? Well, If you know what the problem is, you know the correction is doing the opposite of it. To get your answer as to how we'll go about it, waiting for a weekly broadcast in limited time. If that's what you think the answer is going to be, then you have to move beyond looking for the answers always in a hero or a shero. You're intelligent. I have confidence that you're intelligent. Now, whether or not, again, you have integrity, that's a different story. And in this political season, when these bunch of hypocrites are going to be using that word, I am warning them, me, myself, anyway, that I will be questioning their integrity level once that word is used. It's that important to us people that they don't start taking words for trigger points for political to sound good and to look good. Use that word, bring the receipts to show it. Bring the receipts to show it. As spoken about as late as last night, apparently the agenda to bring about the platform, and it's not necessarily guaranteed to prevent anything, but it will show you who has integrity and who doesn't have anything to hide, where the registry is going to be created, where anybody who is an aspirant and those who are incumbent, if you want to come before the people to show them that you have integrity and you have nothing to hide, then you should have no problem in putting your name on that registry because you have nothing to hide. You're coming before the people to show them integrity, what that looks like. So you should be willing to do that, right? Because you have nothing to hide. You're coming before to do a good work for the people. And the problem why and the reason why that's necessary is because there's a common behavior, a common character and personality that's in government right now. And that particular characteristics and personality that's in government right is the reasons why we're having so much problem here with mismanagement of funds, neglect of fiduciary duties, the stealing, the sticky fingers, the curry favoritism, the friendisms, the bribes, the blackmailing. If you come forward thinking that you're in absence of all these personality characteristics or past receipts on this, then you should have enough confidence to put your name on that registry because you're coming before the people and you want to show them what integrity looks like. Because many people can be bought, but they definitely can be sold. And politicians are what politicians are. So at one particular level in time, you cannot criticize any of the current and past politicians if you're doing the very same thing, no matter what scale it's on. And again, we're coming close to the top of the hour, so we probably will be going into a quick top of the hour brief. But until that happens, people, please stay engaged. I am always willing to learn. Teach me something, or let's share and reason based on what I have been talking about. Because there's one thing I kind of have zero tolerance is when people change the direction of a reasoning or a platform, a conversation, no matter which one it is. So let's be mindful that the topic is concerning our children and the school problem. What are we lacking as far as representation in school? How are we going to remedy it, right? Even though the answers are right there. And people, we'll be back in a couple of minutes. See you in a few.
Hard to stay grounded when it's all in you. We won't lose our focus. We won't drift
We'll be
away.
after me.
Even in the chaos, we're choosing to stay. Hold on, hold on. We're coming through this. So much going on. But we won't lose. Light is still burning deep in the darkness. Oh, hold on. We're rising from this. Lines getting drawn, trying to divide. Turning hearts cold, pushing love aside. But we see clearer through all the
We're back. Hold on, people. Liberation is here, and it's not going anywhere. You know, um, know that. And though it may seem dismal at times, when you think that the enemy is working, the enemy being those who implement government practices, ideology that prevent a people from succeeding and living a happy life, that's what we speak of. Okay? And liberation is here, and it's not easy. It may not look like it's going to be had in its fullness, but it's going to be. You know, the planet right now is in the genesis state of getting rid of that liberation. That I'm sorry, not the liberation, people. Spirits are working, right? This imperialistic scourge all over the planet. It's being challenged with the intention of getting rid of it, eradicating it. That and its product being colonialism. And you can't be so much of a broken spirit not to realize and not to recognize it that it's here, though it's going to be difficult, right? That doesn't mean that liberation isn't here. And when it's here now, you have all the pushback, all the roadblocks, all the gatekeepers, all the neocolonialists, all the sycophants, all of those spirits who are lost, all the defeatist mentality and spirit speaking up against it no matter what it looks like. And it's a very simple thing in that it is a right given to us by the Almighty of righteousness, the Most High of righteousness, to live your life free without intruding on someone else's, affecting someone else's, to be free, to live happily without the man made difficulties. And we're here now, and if we think that we're going to get guaranteed remedies by laws made by men, I think we're more intelligent enough to know that we can't expect that to happen. So when we are in spiritual warfare, I would always give thanks to those who pray in affirmation of and protection of me when I speak and talk. Because a lot of people run from speaking truth because they want to play the political game to be liked. I'm not a politician, so I'm going to speak the truth because my truth doesn't depend on whether or not you're going to elect me. But it's a truth that we need to have. It's a truth that we have to extend to our children and to put into practice so we don't have the complaints of in a small territory like this where the amount of the amount of gun violence that our young, beautiful young children are suffering from directly and indirectly. And so many of our young people here who have done everything necessary to try and get work, to try and get a job, to try and establish a career. How many of them are being blocked from doing so unnecessarily because of how we're running government right now? Recycling people who have retired two and three times and they're still in positions here doing what? And preventing our young children who are being born out of our educational system to try and get work here to contribute to the society can't get it, even though they've made every effort to get certifications, to get qualification to do this, they can't do it. So, in order for us to get good governance and to get the right people in there, you have to question these people's behavior. What are their characters? What what is it that their history looks like? What is it their personal current status looks like? Because if we're not going to approach this election season with that level of integrity, we're not going to get anywhere because it's going to benefit who, for whom, but change for whom and at what cost, according to Mr. King. And again, it's not the children who are doing these things, it's us, the adults. Because the children right now are in school and the younger adults who are out, they're not necessarily tuned in here per se. They're on other social platforms. And the fight is going to be the minds of our children. That's where it is right now. You see that there's some people making an effort to start grooming a younger generation to participate in the full nonsense. The foolishness that's going, that's where they're grooming young people right now. I see it happening all the time. Trying to encourage them to adopt the same philosophy, the same ideology, to subscribe to these things that doesn't benefit anyone in the long run, other than who's participating in the friend up business, in the you know, the hookup business, the in out around, the tie in, the tie outs, the curry favoring, the nepotism, the bribes, sexual molestations, the whole list goes on. So if your society isn't free from that to some degree, collectively, then you look for those in the society that doesn't have these characteristics in their past and in present. Because sorry to say, even if you've committed these things in the past, there is no guarantee that you're going to be doing it in the future, right? Even if people have learned and they've made mistakes. But if you want to change things, that should be hmm, that should be the meter that we set. That should be the starting point for which we should start to look at when we're looking at uh, aspirants trying to fill these positions in our government. Because short of that, people look at the whole election system, look at the government for the past 55, 60 years, how it's been running, how did we arrive to where we are right now, is because of the people in the territory who are filling those seats, who are doing these things. So if you can't now marginalize those who have these common personalities and characteristics and the receipts, the record, the deeds to show that they're capable of, we're not going to change anything. So we have to be that serious if we really want change. Yes, change is going to be had. There's people gathering now and they have a sense of party and a sense of togetherness, and they have a cause, and they're changing things, and they feel, and all the energy is there back and forth, and in between the energies here comes disingenuousness, the lies, the corruption, all that stuff, where they feel that they're doing something, and guess what? They are doing something. A change is going to occur, but it's not the change that's going to alleviate you and relieve us from the scourge that we're experiencing right now, because it's only going to benefit a few for a specific limited amount of time, and before you know it, it's going to be 60 or 70 years if we don't draw a line, and you don't have much time to do so. So at best, any one of the aspirants come out in this time of the year talking about integrity, know that this is part of your slogan. It's not going to be that easy if you use it on your platform, because truth is a constant. So integrity shouldn't be a word that anyone should use right now if you can't show proof of it. The official political season is not going to be actually had until, I guess, the um, supervisor of elections vet the candidates. How competent, capable, and honest is the supervisor of elections when it comes to vetting anyone to begin with? And you're not speaking and isolating or picking on this one person. You're speaking as far as their deeds is concerned, the receipts to show this. There's a whole bunch of hoopla surrounding Miss Carolyn Fox and her position being that she is the supervisor of elections, and what her duties and responsibilities are. And equally so, all of them in the Board of Elections are guilty of what's happening right now. And I could easily prove it, even those who are seeking to do the change, because it is the board's ultimate responsibility, not the supervisory elections, to make sure applicable law, and if done right, it wouldn't be a contested, it wouldn't be contesting, it wouldn't have to go any lengthy back and forth as to what this person did unlawfully or not. But that's not being had. What's being had is a regurgitation of local codes and laws applied incorrectly and assumed incorrectly, but not addressed the way it's supposed to be, to make sure that that problem doesn't exist. And again, when the people are very well learned, there's a lot of things they don't have to do. And if you understand how the election system is run and how it's set up, you can't deny that numbers weren't fudged, and you could sit down and deny it all you want to. The evidence is already there. But how do you get to a point where you're going to guarantee what votes look like and what they don't look like? When the very system that was designed, it's not the laws, it's not the rules, it's not the policies relative to the voting and election system. It's the people who are going in to run these entities, to run these divisions, to run these offices. It's the people who choose to interpret, who choose to be. You can't participate in politics as usual and hold these individuals accountable for a particular behavior when your behavior is indicative of the results that you're complaining about. It doesn't work that way if we're going to be honest. So now with the election system coming up and there's different conversations about what form of uh, participation in terms of the voting process is concerned, that's part of the problem. But the reason why I have a problem again is not none of these papers, policies written otherwise, is the individuals who are going to fill these capacities to do these things. That's where the problem lies. You don't have to worry about a democratic system as to see how many votes you have or how many votes you don't have in reference to moving something forward when the voting process, that democratic process within that department, doesn't apply because of what the law says. So the board can be influenced by a majority vote on something that the law doesn't even allow to be considered. But that's what's happening right now. And ultimately, the board is responsible for the supervisor, right? And how you get the board to perform their duties if the board themselves doesn't understand what their duties are, other than being apprised to what a code says that they otherwise didn't know, what a code allows and doesn't allow, what policies are and what policies aren't, what was followed from what was violated willfully and partly in ignorance, if they don't know these things. And you can't see and seem to talk and say you know these things because the precedents have never been set to this day. Yes, you know the wrongs. Yes, you know who did what. But it's evidence that the person is there not because we have a corrupt judiciary system, which we do have. I think here is even more corrupt than in DC. At least in DC, you could request FOIA, Freedom of Information, and you still get it. Here under the Sunshine Act, see if you see what you're gonna get, how you're gonna get it when you ask for it, and the length of time. So yeah, we know that the judicial system here is compromised. You know, nobody's making these things up. The facts and the receipts are there. But to move forward in this election season, when the laws that are prescribed are not being followed the way they're supposed to, because people want to presume and assume what the laws are, and when you look at where things are going, they're dragging their feet because we have a corrupt judicial system. So remedies, even when you're fighting the right things, doing the right cause, and many of you are doing the right thing with the right intention. I should say they have the right intentions, but doing the wrong things. And then again, they're smiling because they know what jurisdiction or what authority who has and to what extent you're going to present it, right? But ultimately, again, when you are a colony and someone is sovereign over you based on a philosophy, based on an ideology that was never meant to include you as an equal, this is where we are in experiencing the complaints that we have because we are still a colony under a system, a colonial system that once enslaved our ancestors and benefited from it. And caller, if you go ahead and call, I think the lines are free. Um, but what are we going to do in terms of progressing out of the nonsense that we've been doing over and over with every administration, every legislature? Okay. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Russ, I learned something this week that was very good to learn. First time was on Mario's show when he was talking about an author of a book. And Did you have Mario show at that?
No, I didn't know. I was just told that um, yesterday evening or and this morning. I didn't. I don't
Yeah.
know. The author I do know. Um,
Okay.
I can speak to my contribution because I know exactly what was done, and I know who didn't contribute. In all honesty,
Oh,
truth is a constant.
okay.
Even though some names were mentioned, it's mentioned based on the academic circle as opposed to actually contribution to the project.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I had no idea because when I do these things, I don't look for recognition. And I can hear Mr. Sewer yelling at me for this, right? Um,
Yes.
I've contributed to a lot of material when it comes to Hubert Henry Harrison.
Okay.
And short of doing a book of my own that's been shelved for the past 6 years, um, we have a lot of contribution to do here in the territory. And a lot of the times we do things, some of us do things, and we don't do things again to hear your name called here, your name called there, back and forth. But we have contributed a lot to our history here in the territory. I myself, and when it comes to Hubert Henry Harrison, yes. Um,
Yes.
and I plan to cover him and to probably do a whole month, but we're waiting till the logistics fall into place to honor him with other individuals who equally know what his contributions were. Short of
Yeah.
that, I don't know who's mentioning my name out there about anything because, well, again, it wasn't done for that. But
Right.
truth being told, yeah, there were some true contributors, and then there were those who used the academic circle to put their name in things.
Yes.
So,
And like I said, it was good to hear because myself having three manuscripts, but each setting dates to get to the printer for the first book. It's a lot to do, a lot of commitment, and I find myself spreading myself so thin that I can't really get to this phase in my life as far as being an author. But if that is to be, it will be. If not, I got my children and grandchildren, great grand, probably could take it up. The other mention was made, I think it was yesterday or whatever day on the show when oh boy, I forget his name now. Anyway, was on with his first book, and there too there was mention made of other contributors to his book. I mean, Juni Bumba, I'm talking about.
hmm.
And he said, yes, he did a book, but, he didn't do it alone because he had so much contributors to it. And I saw that as something good to give credit to those who assisted. Now, some people don't want to do it. They keep pointing to their own chest and saying, me, me. But they never would say, who assisted them. And that was good to learn. And yeah, I'm so happy that it happened.
Well, sir,
Anyway,
thank you for recognizing that. At least I have Mr. Sewer in my head because he would always beat me up about not making my contributions known.
well,
It's
how
not in my
close
character.
Mr. Saw was.
It's not in
Mr.
my character.
Saw,
It's not in my
Mr. Saw
character to do
Barnes,
that. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Saw Barnes and Thomas, like myself,
Hmm.
we were friends from boyhood. And he has two lovely daughters that seemingly is making their way in this world as well. But yes, I remember when he first came out with his writings and his involvement in salves and rubbing things for rubbing the bonkonko. And of course, his mother, I can see her now smiling. I serve on the board of election with all those elders for shelter, Miss Smaller, Geraldo Gotti, all these older people. I was always the youngest, even at the commission on aging, with Judge
Caller,
and Chris
I'm coming to you.
Mother.
I'm coming to you in a second, caller. No, I'm just telling the other callers online. I'm coming to them. Mr.
Yeah,
Seward,
yeah,
thank you
okay,
for that
well,
recognition. But in reference to this my contribution as far as Harrison is concerned. I'm sorry, but Henry Harrison is concerned. It's not
Right.
anything new. Also with Jeff B. Perry, who's passed, a very good friend of mine, who is the biographer of
Okay.
Henry Harrison,
Right.
which is where Brian would have gotten a lot of his material from, the basis of
Good.
the work. I also contributed then, but again, there's evidence that we do great things and we're not recognized, some of us, because we don't do it to be recognized. We just do it because it needs to be
True.
done, right? So in that
True.
in that in that sense, we have a lot of people accomplishing a lot of things and just don't get recognition for it, right?
That's true.
But
Yeah.
thank you
Okay.
for
Uh,
recognizing
uh,
that, Mr.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll continue to listen.
Okay, have a good day.
You too.
Good morning, caller. Thank you for holding.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, okay, thank you for your patience, veteran.
Well, thank you for the things that you do come and shine a light on in the community. It's very well needed because our legislative body or our governor and senators and so forth, they won't come out and say a lot of the things that is needed to be administered to the community in terms of the things that are happening, the laws that are being passed, the way the community is being run, the way how to manipulate them, the many different ways that you offer here in terms of the struggle, the tribal tribulation, the community is going through. We as people, and we should not be going through these things. We are far gone about the things we've gone through in history, and now we're still on that path of self-destruction. Well, how is it that we're so educated to the point we can't do the right thing? And that's basically kind of what I hear you saying, and then many other people here on the station. And it's a form of, it's just a little disappointment to know that we should be better off as people. So I was just going to leave that as that.
Well, caller, from your perspective, what do you think is needed as far as the financial end of it is concerned?
Well, like any other thing, when you're running your household or business or anything, you have to have checks and balance.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no checks and balance accountability in your form of government. And that government is for the people, by the people, and not working in the best interest of the people, then you really don't have nothing. Look what Trump just did. He set aside what $1.7 billion for what happened up there at the White House.
Mm.
I mean, he's looking out for those that had a problem when the Justice Department weaponized and went after these people wrongfully. But this is their job. They're supposed to protect the community, look out for the best interest of the community. And if there's a problem, let's fix it. WAPA, that is our number one big issue there.
What does the finance look? What does that look? What does that mechanism look like when we talk about WAPA financially, as far as the monies are concerned?
Well, everything goes back to the checks and balances, the structure. There's the legislature body and the governor. And the three branches should be working together a lot more and making it better so it could work in the best interest for the people, not by that cabal or that small group that is still running that one party system of a Democratic Party and telling us about democracy today, democracy tomorrow, and there's no such thing as democracy. It's just a form of an illusion, and they use it in different sentences to get ahead for themselves.
It's a democracy is one of the steps in government, but it's not a form of government.
Yes.
And they, as far as the U.S. is concerned, they don't participate in democracy at all. That's the truth. But they push it as a narrative. Anyway, thank you, caller, for your insight.
All right, you be blessed.
Yeah, walk good, my veteran.
Yeah.
I think God is married, I think, right? Yeah, people. Again, we have people who are knowledgeable what direction we have to go in. We need the time to do it. We don't have the time. And if we have to depend on our legislators and our executive branch and our judicial system to do it right now, we know they're all compromised. That's a fact, right? That's not an opinion. These are facts, right? And why that is because the word opinion comes out, as adults, we have to understand that an opinion is a right given to anybody. You have a right to your opinion on anything, but that doesn't mean that you have a right to share it. So we have to be able to remember that as adults so we can pass these things on to our children, that you have a right to an opinion on everything. You're entitled to an opinion. Don't translate that right of an opinion, having that right to have multiples, as our right to share it. There's a situation, a time when that opinion is needed and is asked for. And if it's not asked for, you do not have a right to share it. And that's, as adults, we have to get across that. Equally so, you have a right to question everything all the time. But not because you have a right to question, it means that you have a right to ask the question. To ask, I should say, that which you question. And we have to get to that place and point in time. So those two things um, are what we have to work on as adults so we can progress, you know, with the intelligence that we have. Um, Mr. Sewer, who was always an advocate for the children in school, him being an educator himself, um, would say, in what, just to quote him anyway, this is not about me. This is Mr. Sewer speaking, Larry Sewer, Lawrence Sewer, as he was going to correct me with this particular section anyway. Mr. Sewer's quoting Mr. Sewer, quote, this is not about me. I am just the vehicle to put it, the point right out there. I believe in our youth. They are what I love most about the Virgin Islands because they are unpolished gems. Care and sincere motivations are the tools required to make them shine. That's Mr. Sewer. And as part of the philosophy that he believed in, he also dedicated a poem, uh, and it's supposed to be somewhere in the as a standard in the board of it. Sorry, in our educational system somewhere. But Mr. Sewer also penned a poem called "The Virgin Islands Child." So let me just share that for a second. "The Virgin Islands Child" by Lawrence Sewer. I am a Virgin Island child. I am a jewel. However, I cannot sparkle unless I am polished. God, the maker of all solvents, created the greatest solvents of all, care. Care can move mountains. Care motivates my willingness to learn. Care expresses love. That was a poem by Mr. Lawrence Sewer called The Virgin Islands Child. So, people, with everything we do as adults, in charge, in stewardship of the generation that comes under us, the children being our future. If those of you who are in the government offices as well as private, if we're not thinking of the children primarily in our minds, in our spirit when we do these things, no matter what we're negotiating on, no matter what level or avenue of government or business you're involved in, if the children are not front and foremost in your mind, it's useless. And in that manner, we wouldn't have people going to these meetings because they have a title and a position or not concerned about how things are being proposed and how monies are going to be spent, especially with our educational system being one of the most important things. And as reminded me, that it is health is primary first before anything else. Without health, you can't address any of these things. So, to address what's happening in the hospital system right now with the health in hospital, that's going to be addressed eventually. Believe me, it is. And it's not going to be by any political promises. Any aspirant is going to come and tell you. It's not going to be that they're going to remedy what's happening with the school system right now, a system of learning, because it's a election year and you want to sound, you want to give promises that you can't keep or you're not otherwise was never interested in, you know. This is a season for hypocrisy and lies. And if we don't find ways to squash, to eliminate, to mitigate this that's become part of our culture now, if we don't fix that, we have a rough future, which means that only way you have a rough future is if the children are having rough time learning, finding themselves. Mr. Copeman would always remind us when he repeats our ancestral adages, right? The destruction of a nation begins in the home of its people. So if you want to destroy the nation, what do? You destroy the homes, the family unit. What does that look like? The village unit. What does that look like? You destroy these things, and they're just about pretty much destroyed here in the territory. The most powerful weapon, Mr. Biko remind us, the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. So if you're oppressing the people's mind and you're attacking the home, the nation is gone, is lost. They would hope so. But we are resilient people because some of us do have the spirit of liberation that can't be bought, can't be sold, is not going to sacrifice truth for a vote. And when we get people here who's not going to sacrifice truth for a vote, who is going to actually speak on the issues, if you see any aspirants getting up to speak on issues and they're not speaking about the moral fiber of the society, where the electorates are going to come from, where the constituents are, what that culture is, if they're not talking about that, they're looking for votes, not talking truth now, you see. And people will put aside truth to get a vote. When you do that, you're sacrificing the integrity of the society that you're living in. So how are we going to move forward if we're not convinced enough to know that we are just as intelligent and we can do things? And we don't have to necessarily wait for a savior to come and do it, a hero or a shiro to come and do these things, because that's also been embedded, indoctrinated into you to wait to do something until somebody shows up. And then there's also convincing of you that you don't know what to do. And it's also convincing of people who otherwise honestly would say that they don't know what to do because they never exposed but your intelligence. And when people believe in your intelligence, they don't allow for that to happen. And they don't allow for that to be an excuse. They don't allow for that to be a comfort zone because you believe in people's intelligence. And you have to convince people that they are, even when they've been deprived of an opportunity to show. They've not been exposed to the system of learning to some degree. They've not been exposed to certain conversation, talks, groups back and forth. They still are powerful people. They're still intelligent, and you can't walk them through because they're with a disadvantage. They have a handicap when it comes to information, knowledge, process, and doing things because they've been deliberately marginalized, right? And then part of the marginalizations is to indoctrinate you into believing that because we have people in a territory in a society who otherwise wouldn't do, that's the reason why they destroy the homes. That's the reason why they keep the control over your minds to make sure that you and other people, or I should say, there are people out there who is going to migrate into the fact that people in the territory have a handicap when it comes to learning and knowing things. You can't buy into that. There has to be a level of, if you're not here right now, you will get there tomorrow. But today's not for you then. But tomorrow will be for you, right? So we have to work with who's here today. And eventually, who's here today will be able to help who's going to be there tomorrow. And that's the way we have to do things. We don't have the convenience of time. And we don't have the convenience of criticizing who's doing what show and how it's doing it and what's lacking back and forth, because then it's possible then you could do something on your end as well. Any one of you. We need to do. And again, in a system and time where it boils down to many people thinking, well, every man and woman for themselves. They doing this, so what I gonna do it too. They're doing that, so I'm gonna do it too. Because in absence of me not doing it, then I don't have the necessary blockages, the hindrances in life. Well, all I have to say is that I'm glad and always grateful that somebody's name who I don't know have a clue of what they look, sound like, did stand up, did sacrifice what they did so that we can be in the position to speak. All things considered, every person thinks that their burden is the heaviest. I have to always give thanks that there are always people willing to go against the grain, speaking truth. And especially the truth has to do with liberating human living souls, the conditions of what's being sacrificed or not being sacrificed. Again, give thanks for who have done tremendous work and their names are not being called, they're not being credited. So I don't have the convenience of living the way you say, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to get burned, or they're doing this, so I'm going to do it as well, because you can't change that in the fold. And your spirit has to always be one of constant. It's what your spirit speak to, because it's always easy for somebody to say, see, I told you that's not going to work. See, I tell you that ain't going to work. See this back and forth, but they have not yet to do anything other than predict something is not going to be done. And it's true, because guess what? They're not doing the very same thing that they're talking about. They're not doing anything. So in essence, they're talking about themselves. And while they're in a position to get and talk so openly, quote unquote freely, the only reason why they're able to do so is because someone else took punishment unjustifiably to support the opportunity for them to be breathing enough to get up and say what, and still not doing something because they're expecting and predicting something is going to happen and not happen, when they in fact have never done anything and still don't plan to do anything other than criticize that there isn't movement on something. Talk is cheap, that's what they say, right? They can predict what's not happening, what's not going to happen, but if you ask them to show me what that looks like, go out and do it and show me what it looks like, they're going to fail every time. They're going to give you a world of excuse, to include those who are always in all platforms saying how much they do and what they do. I do this, I say I do this back and forth. Why don't you just do it without having to come and say the I? You're branding yourself, which means that if you didn't get a chance to brand yourself, would you be doing it sincerely? So go out and do it. Stop looking for credit. Why are you doing these things? Why are we doing these things? And Mr. Seward reminded me that in this culture, it's the I that resonates in people to get their attention. The I said this, I did this, I do this back and forth, and it's needed to recommend it, right? But that's the way the society works. So if we're going to do the I's, let's do the I's when we say, well, I addressed this and this is what occurred. I'm going to address these things so that we can have this effect. Let's start doing this. Let's use the I's now to make sure that when we spell I'm sorry, when we spell team, somewhere I is going to show up. But people, every being thinks that their burden is the heaviest. And who feels it knows it, right? But again, what degree of honesty we have in this election season? Politicians participate in this election season. It's not non-politicians. And politicians are geared to present lies, no matter how you put it. Denial of a truth, wresting of a truth, selecting when a truth is going to be spoken is a lie. You have to be willing to play the game. People are going to be looking for favors, asking for favors, and you have to appease them to some degree, right? Because the nature of being a politician is to be voted to get votes. How are you going to get votes? A lot of people sacrifice truth, and once truth is sacrificed, that's politics as usual. We're not going to go anywhere. When we're speaking about having good and proper governance in real time, because the last time I checked, and if anyone knows different, you can correct me, the past 65, 55, 60 years when we were under self-governing to some degree, right? Look at where we are now in 2026 when things are worse than 40 years ago. We don't have hospitals, repeated 1,000 times, fully competent run. Why? Our school system is being marginalized right now in front, being pretty much dismantled right now. And it's because of the way we do politics as usual, friending up, the friendisms, the nepotisms, the sororities, the fraternities, the groups, the lodges, the churches. How many are wrapped up in the same ideological behavior when each are supposed to be different? Everybody can point their finger in all kinds of directions, but they're all complicit in the common behavior. And if you don't plan to change the politics the way it's usually done, you're not planning to have any significant changes. And what we need in the territory are significant changes, not political changes. That's not going to bring anything. It's not going to resolve at the end of the day who was complicit in the Epstein behavior and who's on the files and Epstein, who's on there from who's not on there. Because the truth is, and it's factual truth, that many who criticize the whole Epstein saga, the whole scourge here, if they were in these places 20 and 30 years ago in government, their names would make the list just based on their behavior themselves. So the only reasons why their name is not on the Epstein list is just a matter of where they were in time. So yeah, this election year is not going to be politics as usual. You're not going to come up and use words, at least on my watch. I'm trying to be a little more engaged. And if you use the words, I don't have to bow for anybody. I didn't come here to bow. I don't have to be necessarily be looking for anyone to like me based on what truth you speak. I am not running for any offices. We're going to speak the truth, right? And the truth is a constant. And when you're in an area where you're representative of a people and the conditioning of a people and the status of a people to fill these things, well, I think it's time to challenge people with truth, no matter who you are, because we need change and it can't be colonial minded changes. And that's what we're facing right now because no matter who say that they're conscious and they're woke, they still speak colonial strategies. They still do this very same thing and they don't get it somehow. They still are representative of how they conduct themselves based on what they allow people to present to them as far as jurisdiction and authority is concerned, as well as the diction for the jurist as well. We'll get into that later. Not want to confuse anybody. But yeah, and people, just as a reminder, the Shakira Gautier case has not gone to rest in case anyone was getting comfortable in the amount of years passed since her murder, since she lost her life, and where she lost her life, and how she lost her life. So you want to give thanks to the competent and honest police officers that have integrity, who are familiar with her case. We want to give thanks to those officers who are doing the right thing because her case has not gone to rest, even though the powers to be think that it has gone to rest. It hasn't. Recently, you had the former chief, Mr. Howell, who decided he was going to give 3 hours plus explanation as to how corrupt the police system is here in the territory and how the mechanics work. 3.5 hours explaining how corrupt that system is, to not include himself, and in the process admitting to violating laws. And the Shakira Gautier case, again, has not gone to rest, people. There will be justice for Shakira Gautier. All she was trying to do, honestly, is do her job. Thank God that the receipt that they thought that she lost her life about is in the hands of. Let's see what integrity looks like during this season. Let's see what integrity looks like. One case at a time, people. And that's one of the similarities in a department where these things should not be occurring. But if anyone wants to justify when a parent lose their child, what that looks like and what it feels like, when you have to look at the evidence and when you have to look at the crime scene itself, I don't know if people have lost their hearts, hmm, where you don't care. But just as a reminder again, the Shakira Gautier case is not going away. We'll find out who have integrity this year. Thank God that at particular point in time, there is a consciousness that comes to people when they're asked and directed to do the right thing, that they can still come forward, and they've been forward, providing what's necessary to address that. And one of the things is just so happened how things manifest themselves, right? Because again, one of the former chief who was chief at the time, 3.5 hours plus speaking on a platform, explaining the mechanisms here in the territory, and in the process is speaking about violating laws. And where are we coming to, people? And where are people who don't want to actually accept that we are a republic, which means we have accepted that there are laws that we're supposed to abide by and live a particular type of life, and we're failing to do so on all levels because we're friended up and we're politically rewarded. Good morning, caller. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, the time is running down, but I feel the need to make this
2 minutes, Mr. Nin, because we're short for time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I need to make this announcement to my folks at home. We're seeing too much of it in mainland states. We know graduation time is supposed to be a happy time. You're glad that you have reached this milestone. Your parents, your grandparents, your friends, everybody are happy for you. But please be careful. We are losing too much graduates. We lost one yesterday that did not even get to the graduation ceremony because he was speeding so much he ran into the back of a damn truck and crushed himself to death. I mean, we have to be so careful. There's a lot of stuff because spiritual wickedness in high places. A lot of people that don't want to see us, that people get to nowhere. They're putting all kind of stumbling blocks in our way. I can only ask you to stay prayed, ask God to guide you and keep you. And please do the right thing. Stop the speeding. Don't drink and drive. Don't dope and drive. Come on. Let's stop killing ourselves. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nick.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, monitoring our yeah, people. Anyway, in the essence of time, people, I want to thank all of you. I didn't get a chance to see who's posting on the chat because it's kind of difficult here the way it's set up. But those of you who are contributing on the Facebook Live, want to thank you for doing so. Thank you for your engagement. Um, as you can see, you don't get much calls, and that's kind of acceptable. We do encourage people to call and to reason, uh, to know that you have the necessary intelligence to move forward. We are intelligent people. We know business. We know banking. We know commerce on the whole. We know that. But we need a level of integrity to go with it. I want to take one last call and see if we can fit it in. Well, the caller hung up. People, yeah. So we need to do that because in progressing as a people, we cannot perform politics as usual. So if anyone is not, if you see right now when the politicking begin and the electioneering begins, right? If it's the same format, don't expect any real change. And I'm going to take one. We're going to squeeze one call in. Thank you, caller. We have limited time for calling.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. I was listening to what you were saying at the end of the program. Check it out clear. So I just want to understand this. Remember, for everybody to understand that Chris Howell, who became the chief of police right after her death, released a video. From what I'm being told from other people, it was shown on Channel 12, the local news here in the VI.
Okay.
And he was talking about the corruption regarding the VIPV.
Okay.
But he never really responded to the murder of Shakira Garcia. So it was quite interesting that after everything that he said occurred, he flat out pretty much admitted that the VIPD and the Justice Department itself is corrupt. But he never really talked about much about the murder of Shakira Gautier. So I just want to make that clear to other listeners that you had a former chief of police said that the VAPD was very corrupt before he joined it, meaning that he was in the DA before. But while he was in the VAPD, he has always been afraid to talk about the murder of Shakira Gautier. Make that clear. I'm making that clear to all the listeners. This is the kind of situation that is going on within the Virgin Islands. The VAPD. I'm not gonna criticize every single police officer because I'm sure there are some decent, good, hardworking.
No, there were some officers. There were some officers that did the right thing and, and still doing. But caller, I sorry you didn't call earlier. We're just giving a grace period here to go beyond the top of the hour. So I wish you had engaged earlier. Okay, but thank you for your contribution, people. There's always next week if you could always call if you want to express these things. And thank you for calling, caller. Okay. And people, we have work to do collectively, and one of it is to not deny truth and to not put truth on the side to satisfy any particular personal interest, be it business or otherwise, because that's what's creating pretty much the problem we have here. That's the lack that we have here. That's the suffering that we have here, to include the health, hospitals, schools, and the infrastructure, right? If we don't do these things, and namely agriculture itself, we didn't even have time to speak on agriculture, because if anybody can bring forward a bill that was produced by any of the legislators that show that our children to benefit our children, or even a competent bill, whether it was passed or not, accepted or not, by any of the past three legislators as far as agriculture is concerned, please have that information for next week so we can talk competently on these issues, okay? And again, our parents, I should say our ancestors would always remind us to walk good in favor. And I have to remind you to never give up nor surrender or sell your rights. Do not sell nor surrender your rights to be given or to purchase a privilege. See you guys next week.